Tonight, it was a rough start to the week for commuters having to cope with ice and fire.
Absolutely terrible. It's cold.
About 2 hours delay. I guess I should have driven.
Subway riders forced to walk through a smoke-filled tunnel while hundreds more waited on platforms or took to the streets. Plus, an update on a prolific Toronto fraudster. Did a massive security breach at a credit union put one family's personal information right into her hands? And
we are desperately hoping to get these ornaments back.
A public plea to return a family's priceless Christmas ornaments after boxes of them were donated by mistake. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. The City of Toronto says when it comes to the snow, it'll finish plowing most city streets overnight, just in time to do another round of sidewalk cleanups tomorrow morning. Hundreds of commuters hoping tomorrow morning's commute will be smoother than today's. Besides the snow, a fire in a TTC tunnel shut a portion of Line 2 for several hours. As Ali Chiasson tells us, some riders were even forced to walk through a smoke-filled tunnel.
I was able to play one song on my phone, and then before you know it, there's sparks. I thought it was maybe something to do electrical, but it turns out there was a fire.
I actually saw the flash go off, and it was, you could almost hear an electrical, almost like a welder. We were there for maybe 40 minutes. 40 minutes.
Yeah, but then the smoke started to get like increasingly bad. Like people were starting to cough, like people were offering each other water, like
Is this in the car?
this is still in the car, yeah.
These two college students were complete strangers this morning.
This is what the underneath of the subway looks like.
That is, until an emergency on the subway tracks forced them and their fellow commuters to lean on one another and evacuate through the dark and dangerous tunnel.
They also had like the fire department, like, were just like moving alongside the, I guess the side with their flashlights trying to help. I mean, him and I, like he was directing a blind woman, but yeah, it was just like out of a movie.
Everyone got out okay, at most with a scratchy throat.
I often have like heaviness in my lungs from all that smoke, but yeah, it was interesting.
Quite the morning.
Meanwhile, for the commuters above ground trying to get to work, yeah, not a very happy ending for them.
I've been over 2 hours waiting. Over 2 hours, and the shuttle buses have been a disaster.
Absolutely terrible. It's cold and it's just a lot right now.
Morning like this morning is frustrating for people. We absolutely get that. It's the worst time of day for these things to happen.
The running theory from the TTC is that a piece of wood that's actually part of the aging infrastructure caught fire from a spark along the rail between Dundas West Station and Lansdowne. And now it's sparked calls for a comprehensive review of Line 2 entirely.
These sections of Line 2 that are the original are now 50 plus years old. The materials that were used were different. So really what we need to try to do in situations like this is obviously get service back, get people moving as quickly as we can, and learn. When things like this happen, are there ways we can learn from what happened this morning so that it doesn't happen again?
These wooden cover boards, they're called, actually exist along 75% of Line 2. The patch that caught fire this morning was repaired temporarily. TTC crews will be back in overnight to do a more fulsome fix and review into the cause. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Nick Cernkovich, you see with his first look at the forecast, I see snow behind you there, but it's not the kind we have to shovel, right?
Yeah, don't sweat it, Mike. We're talking about a little bit that might slick up the roads, but we're not talking about a big snow event like we saw over the last couple of days. Here's a look at your weather headlines. It is a chilly night tonight. Sunny start, though, to the day tomorrow, and just a little bit in the way of snow for the coming 24, 48 hours or so. Today we hit -1 degrees in the city of Toronto with wind chill, though it felt closer to about -7. Now under clear skies tonight, what we're watching is this trough that's back to the west. It's just a little wave in the atmosphere, and as it approaches the GTA, what's going to happen is it'll cloud over through the afternoon, and tomorrow night looking for a few light snow flurries in the forecast, and then in behind it some northerly winds and a bit of enhancement coming off of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. And so that's what I'm talking about with the sort of snow. But in the city of Toronto, we're talking about trace to maybe 2-3 centimeters over the course of 24 hours. Further north, you'll see a bit more. There's a look at tonight's forecast and into tomorrow. Your full weather forecast coming up in just a bit.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
You bet.
There is just one day of negotiations left for the province to avoid a partial teacher strike. Ontario's public high school teachers are planning to launch a one-day work stoppage on Wednesday. Today, the education minister insisted the government has made concessions, and now he wants the union to do the same.
The one insistence from the union over these 200 plus days and counting is the absolute focus on a $1.5 billion taxpayer increase to salaries and benefits when the government believes a 1%, $750 million increase is both reasonable and fair for our education workers.
The Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation maintains the sticking points in negotiations are cuts to support staff, mandatory e-learning and class sizes. The union began a Work to Rule campaign last week and says unless it can reach a deal tomorrow, its members won't show up for work on Wednesday. A new pilot project in the Yonge and Eglinton area is aiming to make it safer for pedestrians. Residents say it's getting dangerous with all the truck traffic from condo and LRT construction.
It's just madness, 24 hours a day.
It's undescribable how bad it is.
You have to be very careful.
The new Construction Hub Coordination Pilot gives city staff the ability to create schedules for all trucks moving in and out of the area. The plan is to keep big construction vehicles away from busy intersections by creating staging areas where they can wait until they're needed. Contractors who fail to comply with the schedule will face fines, or they could lose their construction permits. And tenants in Toronto community housing buildings will no longer be allowed to install window air conditioners. This follows an accident last month where a unit fell from an 8th floor balcony and killed a toddler. The corporation says it has begun to remove window air conditioners in cases where the units are not contained within balconies. They say they hope to remove about 6,000 air conditioners by Christmas and will replace each one with a floor model at no charge by the time the warm weather comes around. That change is projected to cost between $4 and $5 million. Well, Premier Ford hosted his provincial and territorial counterparts today in Mississauga. The premiers are putting up a united front despite their regional differences. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley takes us through their wish list for the federal government.
Well, this was a bit of an emergency meeting of the premiers called in the wake of the federal election. Now that Justin Trudeau's Liberals have been knocked down to a minority, the premiers see a bit of an opportunity to have more sway with Ottawa, and they're hoping that minority makes the federal government inclined to be a little more generous. Premier Doug Ford hosted this meeting, and he made a call for national unity. Handing out maple leaf sweaters might not be the best way of going about that, but if the premiers can't agree on which hockey team to cheer for, they could agree that they all want more health care money from the federal government. They're calling for a 5% annual increase in the federal health transfer. There's no real consensus, though, among the premiers about national pharmacare, despite this plea on behalf of patients by the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador.
What is the point of reducing the wait list if when they leave the physician or the healthcare practitioner, they can't afford the drugs that's prescribed to them?
Now, other premiers are saying they don't want to see Ottawa launch a new healthcare program like pharmacare when the existing publicly funded health system is under strain. Now, Premier Doug Ford didn't have a lot to say at the closing news conference. He really only jumped in when he was asked, when the premiers were asked, about Quebec's Bill 21. That's a legislation banning public servants from wearing religious symbols on the job. It seems like, although other premiers have also spoken out against that bill, they didn't want to talk about it today.
You know, we're here to talk about common ground. We could talk about things, Travis, that we don't agree with. But we're here to talk about common ground, and we respect the decisions that each province makes within their province. And I think I've answered that, so I'll leave it at that.
The next time all the premiers get together will be at the end of January in Quebec City, and that time the Prime Minister will be there. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Mississauga.
Every family has its holiday traditions, but one Brampton family fears it may have lost some of theirs. Christmas ornaments dating back decades were accidentally given away. Now the family is hoping whoever bought them is willing to give them back. Natalie Nanowski has that story.
This one is actually one that my dad gave me many years ago. It was my favorite ornament. And this is the one I used to put up, so it goes up on my tree right now.
That bulb is now even more precious, since there's only a few of them left.
They hold a lot of cherished memories.
The ornaments were brought from Germany by Annalise Weisner's parents. For decades, the whole family would decorate the tree with them, but this year, that might not happen.
My dad doesn't want to part with anything. We convinced him to get rid of the old Christmas tree, and he donated it to Value Village and got a new tree, but unbeknownst to everyone, he forgot that he packed the vintage ornaments inside the box of the tree.
They only realized a few days later and went straight to Value Village.
As I was running to try to find management, we found this wonderful lady who was going to buy 3 of them, and she gladly gave them up to my dad.
They managed to find 5 boxes. There's still 20 missing.
It was so hard to see him standing in the middle of Value Village with just this look of grief etched on his face.
Value Village told us that it's doing everything it can to locate those ornaments that were mistakenly donated to a store on Beauvais Drive and Airport Road. The problem is if someone already bought them, the store has no way of tracking them down. So Weisner hopes that by speaking out, the person who bought them will come forward.
I'm willing to compensate for them, whether it's a reward, whether it's what they paid for them. I'm hoping with the generosity of Christmas that we get a Christmas miracle.
Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
Start treating vaporizers more like cigarettes. That's the main message in a new report from Toronto Public Health. I'm Talia Ricci, and coming up, we'll break down the recommendations, which include asking all levels of government to make changes to regulations.
We have an update tonight on that alleged professional fraudster we've been telling you about recently. A couple in Northern Ontario believe they may have been targeted by the woman after loans were taken out and a car purchased using their daughter's stolen identity. As John Lancaster tells us, the fraud may have stemmed from the recent massive data breach at a bank based out of Quebec.
Deborah Oguntayimbo is already facing more than 50 fraud and identity theft-related charges, accused of racking up big bills in other people's names. For about 7 months earlier this year, she lived in a 22nd floor condo in this Toronto tower. It's the same address allegedly used by someone who defrauded a Desjardins Credit Union customer. The victim from Northern Ontario doesn't want to be identified. Earlier this year, the credit union revealed all of its 4.2 million account holders' personal information was stolen. The victim says her information has since been used to buy a car and insurance policy in the Toronto area. Police are investigating.
While this is going on, certainly we know that there's a potential for more victims out there, and we want to encourage those people to feel comfortable to come forward.
The victim gave CBC News dozens of pages of documents relating to her situation. Among those documents, information provided by creditors. One divulged that whoever took out a car insurance policy in her name listed their home address as the same 22nd floor condo Oguntayimbo lived at. CBC News has learned that Oguntayimbo allegedly used this driver's license to rent the condo. It appears to picture Oguntayimbo, but the name on it belongs to someone else whose identity had also been stolen. Police allege approximately 20 women have had their identities stolen by Oguntayimbo.
The banks are not someone I can trust anymore.
Natalia Bozic's identity was allegedly stolen last summer by Oguntayimbo. She says her once good credit rating is now destroyed.
It ruins your future, it ruins your life. Like, I can't do anything right now. I can't even prove that I myself. To apply for a visa, I couldn't prove that I myself. I got denied everywhere I went because now everything's blocked.
Desjardins says it can't comment on specific cases, but Canada's Privacy Commissioner says the bank was just one of 680 corporate breaches last year where customers' information was compromised, affecting a staggering 28 million Canadians. That's about 2/3 of the population. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto Public Health is asking for tougher regulations on vaping products, saying they should be regulated just like cigarettes. They're just the latest group calling for those stricter rules. Talia Ricci has the details.
Let's start treating this habit like this one. That's what Toronto Public Health says needs to be done.
I think it is good that we try to restrict the availability of these products for youth.
This scientist says in other countries, vapes have been marketed to people who already smoke cigarettes. She says that's how they should be sold.
This has been shown in the UK to be effective, where their advertising and promotion of e-cigarettes is strictly as a harm reduction tool for smokers, for current smokers. And there you see very little uptake among youth.
A new report from Toronto Public Health is recommending the federal government put more restrictions on the advertising, flavors, and nicotine content of vapes. It calls on the city to ban vaping in the same spots that you're not allowed to smoke in, and asks the province to stop the sale of flavored vapes in any stores accessible to minors, like convenience stores.
Having a variety of flavors, especially flavors that are oriented towards teenagers, is definitely a way that you can increase the appeal of the category. And for that reason, flavored cigarettes have been banned for a long time.
Councillor Gord Perks is on the Board of Health. He says it's not too late to make meaningful change.
If you can imagine going back in time and saying to the cigarette manufacturers, no, you can't advertise, you can't sell these to kids, we would have saved a public health crisis from happening. Right now, we're at that same place with vaping.
This report will be presented to the Board of Health next week. According to Health Canada, so far there have been 11 reported cases of severe lung illness due to vaping. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
What do you get when you lead your team to a perfect 8-0 record at home, all while missing some of your top players? I'll tell you about Nick Nurse's big honor after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Another honor for Toronto Raptors coach Nick Nurse. High fives all around. He's been named the NBA's Eastern Conference Coach of the Month. The Raptors have a 14-4 record, including a perfect 8-0 at home. Plus, they've been playing without key players like Kyle Lowry and Serge Ibaka. Raptors have been holding opposition teams to just 40% shooting from the field. That is an NBA best. Nick Cernkovich is back with his extended forecast. Chilly overnight, but we'll need the sunglasses tomorrow.
Yeah, you will, at least in the morning, Mike. The overnight clear skies are actually going to help to drop temperature. So we're going down to an overnight low tonight of -7 with the wind chill feeling like -11. And then tomorrow, a sunny start to the day. And that's what we're looking at as we head through tomorrow morning. Now, into tomorrow afternoon, that trough I mentioned starts to bring some cloud cover across the region. So by the afternoon, it clouds over. Evening commute should stay dry, but into about 9-10 p.m., we're looking at that line of sort of weak snow flurries moving across the GTA. Not a whole lot with this thing, but enough that it could slick up the roads for you a little bit. Now, in behind it, the winds shift out of sort of the west and even northwest in some places, and that's why we're seeing more in the way of snow being picked off in the lee of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay as well. So with that being said, in terms of snowfall accumulations, the City of Toronto on this model showing about 1 centimeter, but again, over a long period of time, so likely not going to see anything really accumulating with this. Further north, though, areas even further north of Mount Forest, 5 to 10 centimeters in the forecast and reduced visibilities and poor driving conditions up that way. Wind-wise, still winds out of the north, but as we move through tomorrow afternoon, we're looking at winds shifting out of the southwest. That's going to help to bring in slightly warmer temperatures, and then this westerly breeze, and kind of gusty as well, gusting to about 40 kilometers per hour, continues all the way through till Wednesday, and we're getting sort of enhancement just in the lee side of Lake Huron there, and that's why some of those snowfall totals will be higher. And that includes, by the way, some of the ski hills up there as well. Overnight tonight in southwestern Ontario, looking at a few flurries down around the Windsor area, especially temperatures of -3, wind chills about -7. Tomorrow, the winds pick up a little bit, gusts to 40 kilometers per hour, temperatures hovering just above the 0 mark, but you will see those snow flurries through the afternoon. The Golden Horseshoe, it's going to be delayed until the later evening hours. Tonight, under clearing sky cover, -7 degrees right across the board, wind chills to -11. By tomorrow afternoon, temperatures hovering around +1, +2 in the region there, with increase in cloud cover through the afternoon. There's a look at your forecast heading through the next 5 days. Tuesday night into Wednesday, snow flurries continue about 1 to 3 centimeters, and then hovering just above the 0 mark for the rest of the week.
We like it on that side of the 0 mark. Thanks a lot, Nick.
You bet.
A quarter century after Jagged Little Pill, Canadian singer Alanis Morissette is going back on tour, but she's only making one stop in her home country. We'll have details on that announcement next. The Toronto-based architects who helped build Toronto's Opera House, the Four Seasons Centre, are now leading the high-profile renovation of one of North America's most famous music halls, the Lincoln Center, home of the New York Philharmonic.
As a student of architecture, it's something you learn about in school. So, you can imagine coming to this building, you come at it with quite a bit of respect.
The Lincoln Center in New York City will remain the same on the outside, but inside, Geffen Hall will be completely gutted. Acoustics in the rectangular setting have long been a problem, so the new design will have more curvature, more natural wood, and reduced audience capacity, all to help with sound quality. The stage will also be able to come forward with movable seating added behind it. The $550 million reno is scheduled to be completed by March of 2024. Now, also happening this week in New York, a new musical based on the music of Alanis Morissette opens up on Broadway. At the same time, the singer announced plans for a new North American tour. We are in luck in Toronto. I don't know about the musical, but our city is the only Canadian date on her tour so far. July 11th at the Budweiser stage. Tickets go on sale next week. It's being held to celebrate 25 years since the release of Jagged Little Pill. That album sold more than 60 million copies worldwide. So much great music on that album. Before we go, this is, of course, a special week on CBC Radio. It is Matt Galloway's last week hosting Metro Morning after 10 years. So the show is looking at how the city has changed in the last decade. Tomorrow, it looks at how there's been a big shift in Toronto's inferiority complex, especially around sports. The Raptors' big win is part of that, so Matt will be speaking with Masai Ujiri, the architect behind that NBA championship. That's tomorrow just after the 7 a.m. news on CBC Radio 1. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night.